Hey guys, Loon here, and I'm back now with a look at a classic game. This is Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Gate. Now, before you freak out, this is a retro game. I love retro games. I'm a massive fan. Many of you guys will have seen this and on my other channel as well. I love to look back at games that I played in the past and see them brought, up to date, or, just to have a little look back and some nostalgia there. This game recently, as well as Final Liberation Epic, which is another 40k sort of style game from Games Workshop back in the day. Both of those are now on GOG, and GOG were kind enough to give me a code for this game to sort of review and check it out. Both these games have recently been brought up to the Windows 8 platform because previously they were not, compatible there. This is one thing that's really good with GOG. GOG provide a lot of sort of retro games, and they make sure that the compatibility is stated on the site. So if you're buying a game, you're not making, you're making sure that it's actually going to work on your system. And with the Windows 8 stuff as well, like I say, a lot of the older games are being brought through. There's quite a few actually that I'm waiting for, like retro games that I want to play, which are not up to the Windows 8 platform yet. So this is a really good thing that they do. If you haven't checked out the website, you probably should go and have a little look through. There's probably many games as an older gamer that you will remember, and it's great to kind of pick those up and get hands on with them. It's something that I regularly do. But the interesting thing when you're looking at a retro game is you're never quite sure how it's going to be, because sometimes when you go back to a game, you're remembering very much with the kind of nostalgia glasses on, and when you actually come to pick it up and play it, it's not quite what you remembered, and you can be a bit like, that's kind of frustrating. Not the case with Chaos Gate. When I sat down with this, I wasn't entirely sure what my experience was going to be. After about 4 hours, I was really enjoying the game. And that's not to say that it took me 4 hours to enjoy the game. It's just like I suddenly realized, wow, time has gone by. And that's a really good sign, I think, with any game. Now this game, let's be honest, straight up when you look at it, it's not a lot to look at. The graphics wise, the graphics wise in the scheme of the day are actually pretty good, but obviously to today's standards, not quite so. But as I've said many times, graphics is not everything by quite a wide margin. The amount of games which have had great graphics but sucky gameplay, or just very tedious gameplay, the mechanics and the sort of core feel of the game, that's what really propels it forward. The customization level, the kind of gameplay experience that you can get out of it, and that's something that Chaos Gate has in spades, and that's why it was such a popular game at the time. If you go on GOG and look at it, you'll see the reviews are all over. It's 4 stars, 5 stars all the way, and I have to say a lot of those probably are from the older gamers. But if you are a newer gamer, you should definitely check this out as well. What's in the game? So you've got 15 custom levels to play from. You also then have a customization where you can just kind of create custom missions for yourself, and those still go towards upgrading your characters. With the characters themselves, you actually have multiple squads to choose from. Every time you do a mission, you go in through a set process. So you start with a mission briefing, and then you go forward into your squad selection, so you choose the squads that you want to go on the mission, and then you can customize those squads fully in terms of their loadout, what they're going to take there on the mission, other bits of equipment that they can take as well. And this really lends itself to how you want to play the mission. Do you want to take more ammo? Do you want to make sure one guy is like a dedicated medic, or do you want to just give everyone some med packs? Is there any special grenades or other tools you might need to take? Do you want to use a lot of very specific crack grenades instead of frag grenades? There's loads of different ways you can play it out. And then of course you have vehicles on top of that, so you have like Predators, Dreadnoughts, Land Speeders, Rhinos. There's loads of different vehicles that you can choose as well to go on with the mission. Ultimately you're fighting chaos over control of multiple objectives, and there's not just Chaos Space Marines, you also have like the Cultists, and they're pretty easy mode to be honest, but they make for some amusing distraction. But don't be too surprised, because the Cultists can sometimes sneak up. If you ignore them for too long and they get like a large group together, they can actually do some damage to at least one of your Marines. And when your Marine is dead, he's dead, and you actually lose him from the squad in future missions as well. So it's not like they just respawn later. You lose that Marine once he's down, you lose his experience. Every time you complete a mission or custom mission as well, it actually builds that Marine's experience, so they become better as a character as they go along. So it actually plays out really interesting as a dynamic, and the mechanics of the game work very well. Another thing that I found quite good about the game is that it's actually very easy to understand. Even if you've not played this kind of style of game before, most of it you can kind of pick up as you go along. I didn't really ever feel the need to kind of look up a guide or manual on this. I just picked it up and started playing. Now granted, yeah, of course, I did play this first time around in the past, but that was a long time ago. And just going through it now, and I just jumped straight into a mission. I was like, I'll figure it out as I go along. It was all pretty straightforward stuff, you know, and you can see right here just me using the, you know, different weapons, giving them orders and so on. It all makes a lot of sense. A nice thing as well is that you can actually turn them around to focus on things. You can give them Overwatch as well. Overwatch is that ability in 40k where basically, because it's turn-based, when you complete your turn, if you want them to watch over an area, they will do so, and they'll use any remaining points if they can do. So if an enemy is moving up, if they're on Overwatch, they will fire at that enemy. And it's a good way of sort of protecting yourself when you have no control physically over the character in the enemy's turn phase. Things that are not so good that I didn't like with the game, this might have been me just failing, but I couldn't find any way. Basically, you have these levels that strip between the graphics, and you see them kind of moving up and down. That's those black areas. So imagine it as like, I don't know, layers of a cake. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, all stacked up, right? And every time you want to go up to a top layer, so you got like the 6th layer, the bottom layer. It's just the way that these kind of games were built, okay, back then. But in order to actually see things up on the different layers, you've got to press on the number sort of across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to choose which layer you're actually being visible on. I couldn't find any way to like default it to the top one, which obviously would be your preference. As I say, maybe it was just me. I couldn't find an option for that. I couldn't find a button that would enable me to do that. So that was a frustrating thing. You also have sort of 3 zoom levels, so you've got very close, sort of medium and long range view, so whether you're kind of close in on the guys or further back. But yeah, that tiering graphic was one thing that I found quite frustrating. That's the only thing with it. But I say, essentially, like once you actually sort of sit down and get into it, it quickly becomes something that's not that bothersome. It's just kind of it's one of those things there. And also, being an older game, you often have to give these things a little bit of leeway because they were built in a time where they just don't have the same capabilities that we do now. So with that in mind, how was my actual kind of gameplay experience? Sitting down with the game, it's very much like a Sunday game, you know. It's the kind of game, because it's turn-based as well, and it's got that nostalgia thing going on, it feels like a weekend game, you know. It feels like the kind of game you just sit down with a cup of tea or something, and you're just going to, like, revel in the nostalgia. I kind of sat down with it, and to begin with, I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to play this for. After about 4 hours, I was like, damn, I'm still actually playing this game. It becomes very enjoyable, and you become really committed in your mission. They definitely take quite some time as well. It's not like the mission's over in a few minutes. It takes quite some time to sort of get your guys together, attack a position, and so on and so on. Also, it can be brutal. The enemy are far from a walkover, and they can really deal some damage to you, especially the Khorne Berserkers. These guys are like melee experts, and they will just charge screaming at your guys, and when they get into close quarters, you need to get out of there, because most of your Ultramarines, the General Marines, they only are going to have their pathetic little knife apparatus going on there, and the Khorne Berserker has this full-on axe. They will rip you to shreds. The only person I found that really stood up against them were obviously the Terminators, or the Librarian character. If you have that with his Force axe, he'll do some good damage to them as well. But this is just, it's a great sort of look back to the 40k stuff, and it's a classic game. Looking back on the website, and as I say, you see the reviews from people, they're loving the game. I'm sure that many of you guys who may have played this back in the day will agree that out of the 40k games that are available, Chaos Gate was right up there. Also, Final Liberation, the Epic game, that was also up there. I remember Final Liberation, playing that on my parents' crappy PC back in the day, and it was amazing. Like, of its day and in its time, these games were right up there. It's definitely something to check out. And as I say, the main thing for me is that, let's be honest, graphically they're not the sharpest, but they're not that bad actually, considering these games came out, I don't know, what, like 15 years ago, maybe more. These games really stand up pretty well, and not to mention the fact that the mechanics is really what makes these games. For sure, it's a little bit clunky by modern standards, but they still play out very, very well. Retro games is something that I'm constantly invested in because they still are amazingly fun. I've played out so many different retro games lately. Something I often find as well is that retro games offer a much more unforgiving level of difficulty. There's been a lot of appreciation for harder games lately when you look at stuff like FTL, maybe RimWorld as well. There's some more games coming out that I checked out this weekend at EGX, which are also along this vein, like Project Zomboid. There's a lot of these games coming out which really focus on, you know, not giving the character too much advantage, because that's something we see so often in AAA games now, where they really do everything they can to create that user experience, rather than sort of making it just brutal. This is because I think the way they perceive that is that if you frustrate your player, they're not going to want to participate in your game, and then they might not want to take part. But I think actually a lot of people want that challenge. They want the brutality of the game to be hard so that they really have to invest in that game. That's definitely, like I say, when you look at something like FTL, that's why that game is so popular, because it's so unforgiving and brutal. And this game is very much on that par. You'd be surprised that despite the fact that your Ultramarines are very, very powerful characters indeed, they can get wrecked pretty hard. And even the cultists that you see around this, there's the Chaos Space Marines, but there's also the cultists. And these guys are little lightweight humanoids. They're kind of zombie-ish almost, but they have little guns they're firing. And yeah, by 1 and 2s, they're pretty easy to take out. But if you suddenly get a swarm of them, like 4 to 6 to 7 to 8, they can actually do some damage. If they're all firing at the same Marine at the same time, they can take him down. So you shouldn't underestimate the enemy in this game. Overall, I just had a really, really good time with it. It's great to look back at some retro games, and I continue to do so. That's why I wanted to bring this here on the channel, because for sure, sometimes people are going to say like, hey, this doesn't really suit the channel or whatever, but there's a lot of these things that I look back to, and I just think it's really important to keep in mind. And it's important as well for me to bring experiences here to you guys on the channel, which you're maybe going to miss out on otherwise. I want to sort of highlight some of these retro games from time to time, and it's not like a regular thing here, but I think it's just important to check back and, you know, remember where we have come from to now. And when you look back at these games, you can appreciate them in many different ways. The way that the game is thought out, the way that it plays out, works really, really well. There's a very kind of logical approach to everything you do in the game, and it really stands up. I will say though that, you know, being a 40k player, I pretty much will play anything that's just like shiny and got 40k stuck on it, so there is that aspect to it as well. I think if you're into the universe of Warhammer 40,000, I mean, that's kind of how it always is with Games Workshop stuff as well. Like, if you're into the genre, if you're into the game and you're into the lore, then pretty much anything you play, you kind of give it a little bit of a get out of jail free card always as well. I think that's always important to remember, is that, you know, if you're into this stuff, you're probably going to love it whatever. You give it a bit more leeway, you know, whereas if you're not into it, you'll be a bit more like harshly judgmental. So I would only say that in my review, maybe keep that in mind, that, you know, I love this stuff immensely already. Whereas if you've never played a 40k game before, you might be better off starting out with something a little bit modern before you look back to the retro games, because, you know, within the 40k universe, it's such a rich and fantastic just IP. It's a fantastic universe, and I wouldn't want maybe like an older style, if it's more difficult to get into for you, to sour your experience of the old thing. Better to play something more modern like Dawn of War or Space Marine, and then come to this later once you have an appreciation for the whole genre. I think that would be a better way to approach it perhaps, but still at the same time, if you're open to it, give it a crack, because like I say, this is the kind of game that you shouldn't just judge, like do like 5 minutes of the game and go like, no. You need to sit down with it. You need to, like I say, it's a weekend game, you know, chill out with it. You know, have some food, get a bit of a drink, sit down with this game, just relax, play it through. And you'll be surprised. Like I say, I started off and I wasn't too sure how I was going to feel about it. 4 hours later, I was still playing. I was like, damn, you know, actually, I need to get off now, but I really wanted to play some more. I'll probably live stream some of this as well soon. It's just really awesome. GOG as well are a great website, because you have obviously like Steam and other places where you can get your games, but GOG, the main site that really focus on retro games, they have a massive catalogue of retro stuff, and it's a great place. I picked up multiple things there myself already, and the great thing about GOG is that they don't kind of just stick stuff up there and leave it, but they actually do have like an ongoing development process of bringing these older games up to the modern OSs and things to make sure that they're playable for everyone. There's a few that, like I said, that I'm waiting for myself, because there's some great games that I remember playing that I really want to sort of check out now, but maybe aren't optimized for the system that I'm running. So it's always good to be waiting for those, and they constantly have new things. They had like System Shock coming out recently as well, so there's a load of stuff going on there. It's really one to check out. I'm sure many of you are aware of it already anyway. So that's this one today, guys. Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Gate. I'm going to have Epic Liberation I'm going to check out as well pretty soon. But I hope you enjoyed looking at these retro games sometimes. I think it's just a nice change up from everything else, and it's good as well, like I say, to put other games in context. So I hope you enjoyed. Drop your thoughts below about Chaos Gate. Maybe if you've got some nostalgic memories of the game and you're going to go pick it up, I would strongly recommend it. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time for some more Warhammer 40,000.